Hello everyone, it's Elaine. Thank you for joining me here today on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a lot of masking, so pull up a chair and grab a coffee. I'm using these two stamp sets today. I've listed them down in the description box below. And I am first of all taking my Misti and a piece of Copic friendly cardstock along with just a piece of clear acetate over the top of that cardstock. And I have taken the steps out of the Onyx stamp deck, the Hall stamp set, and I've just popped that down directly onto that acetate because I'm going to be using that as a guide or a reference so that I can line up my dog and my little girl so that they will be behind or they will be in front of the steps. But I needed to stamp the steps out just to get a guide of where I want my stamps to be positioned. So then I just remove my acetate sheet and then I can go ahead and ink up my little images. So I'm just using my Memento Tuxedo black ink for this. I ideally would like to have an ink that was both Copic friendly and water-based friendly, because when I do the ink blending with my masks I was worried it was going to smear, but I wanted the Memento because I wanted to be able to Copic colour. However, everything worked out fine, but that's ideally what I would get in the future. So I've just put my step stamps into my Misti, but before I ink them up, I am popping these masks over the dog and the girl. I did this all off camera. I just stamped them out onto some masking paper and fussy cut them out, cutting directly along the black line. And then I can go ahead and ink up my steps. Just stamp that again a couple of times. And this is quite a card that is quite out of my comfort zone, so I haven't really done a lot of masking before. So I did really have to think about what order to do everything, but I want to put a bow on the front door. So I pop the door stamp into the Misti and also pop the bow on the top, so that I can stamp that first. Because it is a one layer card, I need to do lots of masks to make sure everything gets into position correctly, and then I can go ahead, pop the mask on the bow and then pop the door stamp into the Misti and then stamp that down as well. I have had this stamp set for over a year, but I've been quite intimidated by the door and colouring that in, so this is quite a new experience for me. I've popped that mask over the top of the door, and then I'm also popping a mask on the steps because I'm going to be doing some ink blending in a moment. So now I've just doing my little owl, and then also doing my owl holding a little bauble. If I was going to be colouring a scene directly with my Copics, I wouldn't need to mask them off, but because I'm just masking them off. I don't want to be getting any ink blending on my owl or the baubles. So here I've just taken an ink blending tool and I've got a grey dye ink. This is just a Memento grey flannel ink on a blending tool, just really lightly adding just a little bit of colour around the door. I wanted to have it fading out towards the edge so the colour is more concentrated around the door and the steps. And now I'm using this Holtz stencil, a sort of brick wall stencil, just holding that down with some washi tape, and there you can see that ink pad that I've used, and just adding a little bit more shading. Again, concentrating the colour around the door and the steps and the dog and the girl. And I think the stencil is quite narrow, so I did have to go in and move it across, just sort of lining up those grid lines really. It's quite a soft background, nothing too harsh, so it didn't matter if everything wasn't lined up completely perfectly, especially as I was trying to fade it out towards the edges. And just do the same on the other side. I try to tap off most of my ink so I don't get any harsh lines. And once I'm happy with that, I can then go ahead and remove the masks. I prefer to use the knife. I was using a pokey tool, but I didn't want to damage the paper underneath because I was worried that that would then affect the paper when I Copic colour. I didn't want anything to bleed. So I'm just removing the masks. This is my favourite bit because it all looks a little bit messy until this point. And I do save those masks. I put them back in the stamp set so that I can use them at another time. So now I've moved on to the Copic colouring, which I have sped up quite considerably. I've listed the colours down in the description box. Hopefully I'll have them on the screen for you as well. And also there'll be a coordinating blog post, which I will link in the description box below as well, in case you wanted to have a look through that. I'm using some E40s for my owl. So this card, before I started colouring it, sat on my desk for a good 5 or 6 days. I did make the Lawn Fawn Reveal Wheel Hello Bluebird card. Once I'd masked it all and done all the stamping, I was just so intimidated by that door, I couldn't bring myself to colour it in. So I made a different card in the meantime until I had the confidence to colour it in. So this will be my last card for my Christmas card series. But I've really enjoyed making lots of Christmas cards. I'd make them all year round, and I probably will carry on making them, but maybe just not in a series until next year. But I was really happy with how the card turned out. It's always good to try something new and go out of your comfort zone. So now I'm just moving on to the bow. Tried to keep the colours fairly similar throughout. Didn't want to add too many different shades. So the same green on the bow as on her hat and boots. Some cool greys for the steps. And some more grey around that door surround. The door is quite a large image, but it's so versatile. You could use this with any other stamp sets you've got, and I hope to do that. So this is where I did get a visual from Google of a front door and tried to copy that, but in the end I just decided to do my own thing. So my R29 was a little bit too dry. I do think I need to refill it. It was fine for this card, but I think before I use it again, especially on something that's got quite a lot of space to colour, I would make sure that I refill that definitely. It was a bit squeaky and it looks more streaky on screen than it actually is, but it was fine. But I think in an ideal world I'd have had a refill for that. I'm just finishing up colouring the door here, adding in some extra bits of shading. I'm using the same reds or similar reds for the girl's dress. I did bring in my R27 because that R29 was getting a bit dry. Some blues for the bauble. I tried to add in some goldy tones around the band on the middle. And then once I finished the colouring, just went in with a white gel pen on the cheeks. Just adding a few little highlights here and there. There's no rhyme or reason where I'm putting these highlights. I just go wherever I feel I think it needs it. Excuse my head. And then just to make it look like they weren't floating, I went in with some warm grey markers. Added some Wink of Stella, shimmer pen over the door, some Stardust gel pen on the hat. And to finish the card off, I then decided to heat emboss a sentiment from the Deck the Halls stamp set. So I've prepped that with my Antistatic powder tool. I'm using my Verasfine Onyx black ink to stamp out the sentiment. Just apply some clear embossing powder over the top and heat set that until it's nice and glossy. So I trimmed my card down to just smaller than an A2 size card base, applied some ATG all over the back, and press that down. And there, my card is finished. I really hope you enjoyed that video today, and thank you for joining me on my Christmas card 2018 series. I really hope you've enjoyed all of the videos I've created. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, a great new year, and I look forward to seeing you back on my channel in 2019. See you soon. Bye.